because there are some things that should be said face to face. And I think people have lost courage to say hard things face to face. And that is what I feel like we should bring back. Because if you say something hard to somebody on a text message, you're not giving them benefit of the doubt to handle that information, take it, use it, have the conversation. Like, you're just thinking that it's going to go badly, and so you don't want to be there to witness it.
Have you ever felt like you're being pulled in a million directions? Like you're interested in all the things, but society keeps telling you, just pick one? Well, on this episode, we're throwing that advice out the window. Meet Katie, a former NBA dancer turned tech guru turned fitness coach, who's proving that being a Jill of all trades, as we called it, isn't just okay, it can actually be a strength. She's sharing her secret to embracing a multi-passionate self, overcoming the pressure to niche down, and finding success on her own terms. Plus, we'll dive deep into the power of vulnerability, authenticity, communication, and building systems that actually supports your Jill of all trades lifestyle. Let's dive right in. Katie, welcome to the show.
Well, thank you. Thank you for having me.
You've had a very diverse career, from dancing professionally in the NBA to coaching fitness, working for tech companies. You call yourself the jack of all, master of none, which I find very interesting. And I think sometimes people would maybe glean a negative stigma around that statement. And I'm curious as to like how you'd maybe help somebody reframe that, or what's your thinking behind like being a jack of all trades and having all these skill sets and how that's shown up in your life.
Yeah, no, I think there's actually a lot of power in it. And you're right. I think there is a little bit of a negative connotation, but really to be so adaptable, I think, is a skill. And yes, I have done a lot of different things. I've experienced a lot of different things. And I've learned something in every single experience that I've had. So when I say that, jack of all trades, master of none, and honestly, like, I probably am a master in some things. I'm just not giving myself enough credit, but yeah. Probably what I'd say.
Speaking of that, though, I'd be curious, though, is like, where did that stem for you in a lot of that stuff? Is like, have you just always had a diverse set of interests and like playing with all the different groups as a child, right? Is like you were with the sport kids and also the drama kids and everything in between, or like, where does this stem from? Like, where did this start?
I would say definitely as a kid, I was bouncing around from sports. I mean, I did everything, but could never commit to one thing. So you're right. There is a bit of a trend there, but I think I wanted to try a lot of different stuff. I didn't want to get stuck in one thing. I saw from a young age, also, I mean, I'm sure that if I would have put all of my effort into one thing, I could have been really great at, like, say, gymnastics or really great at dance. But I just didn't want that life. Even at a young age, I saw girlfriends of mine who were stuck in the same sport because they happened to be really good at it, and their parents kind of made them do it. And it became, I mean, they got really, really advanced into the sport and, were having to travel, during the weeks to go to certain sporting events. And I just was hanging with my friends, still doing all the different types of sports. So I'm really happy that I had and did all the things that I did as a kid. And maybe that is what kind of led into this as an adult, just not being able to quite figure it out. But even then, that's not necessarily a bad thing. And I feel like a lot of people probably live in that same space. And I think too, you can almost make it hold you back in a lot of ways because you're kind of feeling sorry for yourself about not having the passion and the mastery at something. I know that in my train of thought over time, that's gotten to me a little bit. But really, when I sit and look at it, I'm like, no, I think it's really okay. And there's probably more of us out there that exist than the people who have the passion that's made them the millions and millions of dollars. Like, there's probably a lot of us that exist that have dabbled in a lot of different things. And I think that's okay too.
Well, I feel like we live in a unique time where obsessive behaviors are often rewarded. Mm-hmm. Like, I think a classic example of this is I was actually just listening to another podcast interview with Jimmy, Mr. Beast, if you're familiar with him, like the #1 YouTuber on the planet. Yeah. And he's very obsessive. And it's interesting because like that can also have a dangerous side, as we know, when it comes to like drugs or alcohol or things of that nature. He's obviously been able to channel it into what society would consider a productive manner. But then when you have conversations with him, you realize he's not super happy, right? Like he realizes that he pays for this obsessive nature in his just mental well-being. And so I say that because like I'm hoping to maybe reframe the way we think about the idea that we need to have a niche, we need to be a master of a certain thing, and maybe there is value because like the pendulum always swings, right? Is like currently in, I would say, in today's society, it seems as if we've drifted towards like be obsessed or be average.
Yeah, exactly.
But maybe there's a future where it's the opposite.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Or both, because life is long and it's going to throw you a lot of different curveballs. So maybe you stumble across it in your mid-20s. Maybe you stumble across it when you're 65. Like, you know what I mean? Life is just going to throw you different things every single day. And you just have to roll with the punches. And I just want to find the thing that's going to make the most difference in people's lives. And I think for me, that is fitness. And there's also that, and I don't know if you've experienced this as well, which is when you think that you have a passion for something and how you can share that with other people, you're almost kind of scared to share it because you don't want it to be the thing that then takes over your life and then you lose the passion for it. So I think that's kind of also what's taken me so long to really dive in to the thing, right? It's maybe what's kept me distracted with all the other things.
Is that fitness for you then? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
Like you're afraid to give it up because you're afraid you're going to lose your love for it if you just pour it into being your whole world?
Yes. If I put in the amount of focus that I know that I probably should and probably will end up doing at some point, I'm afraid I'll lose a little bit of the fire and the passion that goes in to it being for me, right? So
I don't want to scare you off, but that's exactly what happened to me.
Yeah. Perfect. Can't wait.
Yeah, it did. I very into fitness, liked working out, yada yada, the whole story. Became a trainer, and realized I hate being a trainer. That's my nature, though.
Yeah.
I think that because the same thing happened to me when I worked as an occupational therapist. I'm just not a good practitioner, to be honest. Like I'm far better in supporting roles, like marketing and doing content and things of that nature. I'm really not good on the front lines. Like don't hire me. I'm a horrible technician. So I think that's definitely unique to me. So I'm not saying that would happen to you.
Yeah. But it's, you had to put yourself in those positions to kind of experiment with it, right? So I guess that's what I'm saying is you could go all in and then just realize that you're actually really shit at some things. Can I say that?
Yeah, for
sure. And then you
It's
just got to reel it back and figure out another game plan. And maybe that takes you down a different path. So it's just allowing that flexibility within life. And I think that flexibility has probably come easier for me than maybe it has for others.
I like what you said too about, I don't hear it said often about life being long in the sense that you often stumble upon that passion though. I think there's always an opportunity for it like later in life.
Yeah.
The most classic example is Colonel Sanders in KFC, right? It's like, I think he started that when he was in his 60s maybe. Yeah. And now it's like one of the most well-known fast food chains.
Exactly.
So there's plenty of examples of people that figure it out later. I mean, there's definitely also a lot of pressure to figure this out as soon as possible.
100%.
Because you assume that like once you figure out this thing, your passion or your purpose or whatever label people put around it, it's like, oh, now my life's set. Everything's perfect. I'm great. I'm going to be rich and wealthy and happy and successful. And that's actually honestly not the case in most circumstances.
No, not at all. I mean, and this is going to probably sound strange because I am still very young. Like I consider myself young, and it depends on first the context of what you're talking about and also who you're talking to. Because if you're talking to a 24-year-old, that person is going to be, I'm going to tell them my age and they're going to be like, wow, I first off didn't realize it.
I look
great. and second of all, like what? Because that seems like so long from then. But then you get to be 38 and then you're like, that didn't seem so long ago that I was there. So it all is just in perspective too. And then that pressure of society and where you should be. And of course now with like social media, because again, at my age, social media wasn't really around. I mean, it was there, but it didn't really start popping off, as the kids say, until like 2014. So by that time, I was 28. I mean, I was a full-grown adult that I'd lived most of my life without it being on the internet or seeing anybody else's life on the internet.
Totally.
So now that this is a thing, we're all seeing everybody's highlight reels and where everybody is at. And also for me too, as a woman, being a single woman, like without kids, like it is wild
Yeah.
with the amount of assumptions that are kind of put on me. And maybe that's just an internal thing that I feel, but like I don't think it is. I think a lot of people probably feel the same way in a lot of spaces, but we're lucky, or I'm lucky that, you know, this is Austin, Texas, and everybody's pretty open-minded about everything. But I'm also from Oklahoma, where it's not so open-minded, and people almost feel sorry for me when I go home in a lot of ways because I'm not married and I don't have kids, or they just don't understand it. And I'm like, no, I actually really love this life.
Yeah.
So I kind of just wonder from like a guy's perspective, and you being where you're at here with you starting this podcast, like how that has been for you. Do you still feel that pressure to be, or for this like podcast to be a certain level? Like, what has that been like for you?
Yeah, comparison. I mean, everything is perspective. I mean, you nailed it, right? It's like if you talk to somebody older, they're going to have a different perspective versus somebody younger.
Yeah.
And depending upon where they live and what city they live in and who they've been around and how they grew up is like perspective. Quite literally, like I can't stress this statement enough. Is literally everything.
Yeah.
Everything. Yeah. Everything, good or bad, is a label that we assigned it based on our perspective. Not based in truth, not based in fact, purely based in subjective perspective. Everything.
Yeah.
So it's like, I'm pretty good, luckily, about zooming out and gaining that better perspective to not get drowned in the aspect of everything you see on social media is the 0.01% of every category in terms of fitness, relationships, business. You're only being fed the top 0.01% of every category. And to compare yourself to that is insanity.
It's exhausting.
Yes.
Yeah. And I mean, that again, that's kind of why I feel like there's so much work to be done in the space of one-on-one coaching, because you have to constantly remind people of that. Like, most of that world is not real ever for anybody. I mean, unless somebody's just super, super authentic, but even then everything's edited in a way. So yeah, it's something really important to keep in the forefront of everybody's mind.
I know you have this idea about, on that note, of just vulnerability. And just, I think you've described it as your superpower in some ways. And I'd be curious as to like how that's shown up for you or why you believe that to be true.
So I was once given the compliment that whenever people are around me, that they feel the safety to be themselves. And I think it's because I feel that way. I'm not afraid to have a deep conversation with somebody. I'm not afraid to, and honestly, like, I'm a little awkward when it's like surface and superficial. I just, and some people are probably like, what's wrong with her? It's just because we're not talking about real stuff. If we sit down,
you're like, how's the weather? You're like, there's weather? What are you talking about? Like...
Exactly. I'm like, yes, perfect, I guess. Yeah, it's always super weird. But yeah, for me, I think it's just, that's how you really connect with people. It's how you really get to know them. And how do you expect to do that if you're not meeting them on their level and at least trying to put yourself in their shoes for a second? You know, it's asking the questions back and forth. It's being genuinely interested in one another. I mean, you could look at dating, right? I mean, I feel like, and I'm maybe speaking off term here, but in my experience is we've kind of lost this art over time, which is when you sit down with somebody, all you want to do is talk about yourself. And that's actually how you feel like you're kind of connecting with somebody, is when you get to talk about yourself, but it should be a two-way street. And one should be listening, the other should be talking, and then the roles should reverse and flip. But there is a depth that comes to that too. And it's kind of that art and that dance of getting to know somebody. And I just feel like I'm able to do that pretty well when it's a one-on-one sort of situation. But again, with that coaching and that one-on-one space, you have to be able to share your experiences too. You can't just have the other person open their wounds for you and expect, you not to share any of your journey. But I'm not afraid to do that. So
it's probably why I didn't love the training thing. Not that I don't love one-on-one conversations. Obviously, I host a podcast show, which is all I do on this show. But you mentioned the opening and the wounds. Oh, this sounds horrible. I'd prefer not to know.
And that's okay. Like, it's an energy thing too, right? Like,
that's totally what it is.
And this sounds so woo-woo and so Austin, but like, there is, when you start getting into those relationships, specifically in terms of nutrition coaching, I mean, you almost have to go there with people because it's not just about food ever.
It never is, yeah.
It's always deeper. And in order to make any sort of lasting change, you have to talk about the thing that's actually happening. It's not just that they don't want to go to the gym. It's not just that. It's just, what if it's a confidence problem? Okay, why? Well, because I've been overweight my entire life. Okay, but why? Well, I got made fun of whenever I was 6 years old because of XYZ. Okay, well, let's start there. Because, you know what I mean? And then everything kind of plays forward. But yeah, it isn't, when you go there with people, you can feel that energy drain a little bit. And when you work with a lot of people and you get a lot of those stories, it does weigh on you a bit. And I think it does take a special kind of person if you are trying to get there with somebody and get on that deeper level. It's going to take some effort.
Totally. My girlfriend, as you know, she's a chiropractor.
Yeah.
And
beautiful, by the way. Like, anytime I see her, her outfits are like always super cute.
She's pretty damn attractive.
Yeah, she's pretty great.
We've had this conversation many times as a chiropractor, the majority of her job is engaging with people on that exact level of like getting down to the emotional level of what's actually happening and feeling that. Like, her ability to read and understand and feel what somebody else is feeling is so far beyond what I can do. Like,
we're women too, so
that's for sure part of it. But I mean, there's definitely a proclivity of like why most females in healthcare, or most people in healthcare are females, nurses, right? Is like that.
Yeah.
The emotional aspect of being able to feel those things and to empathize with somebody.
Sure.
But yeah, like, I respect it a lot. And where I'm going with this is, have you ever heard the expression amnivert?
Yeah.
I would assume you're probably an amnivert.
Yeah.
Okay.
Go ahead and say that.
Okay.
I kind of bounce in it. Yes, but for the most part.
And the reason I say that is because what I noticed when I was in the coaching training space is that a good day for me is if I have like one or less human interactions.
Yeah.
So being a coach or trainer wasn't great for me in terms of how I'm wired. Curious for you as to like, how do you manage that? I mean, obviously you're probably somewhere more in the middle, but still.
Yeah. I mean, well, I think that also comes with time and experience. And like, if you do kind of enter into one of those days where it just becomes a little bit more taxing, I think it's just the awareness of it all. And like, okay, how do I move that? And you just have to kind of have the systems in place for yourself to maybe just charge some of that energy. I don't know what that looks like for different people, but for me, I've become kind of, I mean, I've just been liking more, I guess, these days of recording myself on a voice memo, and I'll just talk about it, kind of like I would be to a friend. So it's just out there. I'm not a big writer. I don't really like journaling, but I can talk for days. So, and this way, I'm not troubling one of my friends to listen to me. Right? It's just kind of going out into the ether. Well, it's on my phone, so I hope nobody ever.
Do you listen to it?
That. No, I actually don't go back and listen to them.
It's just you could do at some point, this is such a nerd man side of me, I guess you would say, is you could eventually just like transcript all those into like a AI. Or I mean, I guess you could do that as well. Yeah. But you could literally just like pump it into an AI and be like, what are the trends that you noticed, or what are the topics I seem to keep talking about, or like what are the things I seem to be ruminating on? And it'll tell you, and it'll give you like insights probably.
That is a great idea.
Yeah. It'd probably give you a lot of insights. I don't know how much backlog of these voice notes you have, but might be interesting.
Yeah, it's probably going to be like, you are deeply troubled.
Yeah. Just call this number immediately. You need a psychiatrist.
No, but that's genius. Yeah, probably might give that one a try. There,
It's
Corey.
something I've been doing a lot lately is like I actually now record all of like my sales calls or my video calls, or even I met with a client earlier this week and I literally just pulled out my phone and just recorded it, because then I know I can just take all that transcript and put it into AI and it helps like summarize it and digest it for me.
Yeah.
Because you have all this information, it's like, why not use it? And yeah.
Yeah, I don't disagree. I'm going to start doing that. I'm going to steal it from you.
Side note. Something I wanted to tap into in terms of your ability, you were talking about like the give and take of listening, speaking, understanding, having vulnerability. I'm curious because I know you have a background in sales. If somebody, we'll say, sucks at sales,
Yeah.
and they wanted to be better, what's maybe some tips or advice we could give to them?
You need to get down to what that person actually needs. So it's just, again, being the question asker and getting down to the nitty gritty of what they're really trying to say. Because I think you could spin your wheels trying to sell them different parts of what you offer without actually narrowing in on what they actually want. So you figure out what they actually need, and then you can work on that solution. So I think that sometimes people miss the mark on that a little bit. And that's where that relationship building kind of comes in at the beginning of everything.
You were doing medical sales, right?
Mm-hmm.
Was that, I mean, what was the, I guess, thesis behind like medical sales? Is it different than most sales, or are they all kind of the same, general same principles? Like, what do you?
I mean, that was like the one and only real sales job that I've had, right? Where, I mean, and to be fair, that type of medical sales job, I think I was actually innately pretty good at it. But it was the essence of the job that wore me out. We were going to family practices all over. Like, I had a 4-state territory, so already super huge. I was in a car all the time. My body hurt. Like, I just wasn't the best version of myself whenever I was going into speaking to these people. And also the environment that you're in. A lot of these primary care providers were exhausted. They did not want to talk to you. Which obviously a lot of salespeople will hear this and be like, duh, that's what sales is. And I think for me, that took a toll on me energetically. Like, I didn't like being around people that hated their lives. And so it made that sales experience a little different, and maybe why I didn't want to move forward with it. That's why I did a complete 180 and quit that job and moved to Austin and started over again.
Why were you good at it? You said you were good at it.
That listening portion. I think I was really, I was less concerned with what the doctor wanted and more concerned with what the staff wanted, because really they make the decisions. I mean, they say that the doctor does, and I think the doctor even wants to think he does, but most of the time it's the staff that's like gonna nudge him. And if you get their backing and their support, then more than likely you'll get his or her support for whatever physician you're talking to. But especially in those settings where it's like you're kind of mom and pop doctor's offices, like in the middle of nowhere, Missouri, like you're going to want to talk to their staff and win their staff over first.
This is kind of like how toy companies market to children, not to parents more often, because they know that if the kids just nag them to death, eventually they're going to buy them the toy.
Yeah.
Kind of the same concept, right?
I think so. I would imagine.
Yeah. I mean, I've never done toy sales.
I don't have kids, so.
Yeah, I don't either. But I'm thinking about it from like a sales marketing perspective of like, if someone's listening to the show and we'll say they're maybe a practitioner or a clinician or something of that nature, it's like, are they talking to the right person?
Right. Yes.
Right.
You have to know who makes the decision.
Totally.
And it could be, people want to think it's the person in charge, but really probably not. The person who's in the trenches every day doing that paperwork or deciding like, hey, that process takes too long. I don't want to do that. I'm going to go with this other company where all I have to do is tap a button on a screen. And maybe that's the person that talks to the doctor for you. So it's just figuring that out first.
I heard this expression once where it was the husband controls the head, but the wife controls the neck. Have you heard this?
No.
Yeah.
But that sounds interesting.
Yeah.
Explain.
I mean, if you just visualize the aspect of like
Blood flow and
well, like the man thinks he knows what he wants because he's like looking around, but the one actually controlling the neck is the spouse, the female in the relationship.
Yeah.
So like who actually runs the show at the end of the day, right?
Well,
I'm sure it's not always
there we
true,
go.
but I just picture that. I think it's a good analogy for kind of what we're talking about
We'll
here.
go with it.
So what led you to the path of the fitness coaching side of things? You seem to have had a windy road to eventually end up here.
Very windy. Yeah, and I'm still on it. I'm still definitely figuring it out. So I think when you are in any type of fitness, right, you kind of become more aware of the fact that you have some unmet potential. Probably the more in shape that you get, the more you're like, how much better can I get? It seems to be that way. At least it's been that way for me. And I think when I started to really tap into it, whenever I was in my late 20s is when I really started to fall in love with just fitness in general. And then I was like, well, I can actually coach this. My body awareness, my ability to explain movement is probably just comes more naturally to me than it maybe would for some other people. So that's kind of what made me think, hey, you could actually probably do something with this. And I just started like bar and Pilates instructing. That was first. And then I got into CrossFit coaching. That was second. And then on it, I just started coaching group fitness classes. And that became just a thing again that I would just do for fun and for me. And then it turns on a different part of your brain, right? When you're having to explain movement to other people. And honestly, that for me, that communication muscle is a muscle that I still need to work on. And that challenges me in that way. I think coaching is the thing that I realized I probably need to do more often because it makes me a better communicator.
I want to circle back to this communication thing in a minute because I know it's something that you're quite good at and you know a lot about.
Thank you.
Yeah. But before we do, though, a quick side tangent here. I'd be curious as your perspective on diminishing returns. And what I mean by that statement is that this is something I've been thinking a lot more about lately because you mentioned the fitness thing or the health thing, and you could apply this to literally any category. Mm-hmm. Is that you get so deep into it and so good at it and you're doing all the things that I think oftentimes it begins to lose its value. I think health is one of those things for sure, right? Is like you start dabbling into like the 0.01% of biohacking and you're doing the red light and the, I don't know, name your biohacking thing that you're doing. Maybe you put some cool glasses on or something that, I don't know. I don't even know what the biohacking things are anymore. But my point is like, I'm just interested, it's like your perspective on the diminishing returns because I think it applies to every category from health to money to relationships. Is like I feel like you can get to a point where it's like, is this even valuable anymore?
Totally. Yeah, I don't know why, but I think people like to overcomplicate the shit out of everything. I mean,
isn't that our favorite thing to do?
It just seems like we love thriving in chaos, and that's what we kind of do to ourselves in those moments. Again, deeper issues. But no, I mean, it's just keeping the most important thing. And I think, again, I keep coming back to this. This is why I love one-on-one coaching, because you have somebody to keep you on track, to keep you focused. You're not going to go off in all these different directions. If you have somebody to reel you in, if you know that that's a tendency of yours, or to just like brainstorm different thoughts about things and pull in different ideas and different perspectives and figure out what you want to spend time on. I think if you get locked into your own brain and what's going on between your ears, it's very easy to get distracted by all these shiny things, especially, again, with the internet and flashy marketing and things of that nature. But really, most of the things that work are boring, like very boring, and you have to be very consistent with it.
Totally.
And nobody wants to do that work. Like, it is not what anybody wants to do. And that is why, it's simple, but it's not easy. And that's what habits that are meant to be built and can be built on should look like. They should be simple, but not easy.
I wonder if we could riff on like the most essential pillars in the categories. Like, for example, I can start. So, like, in the health category, I would argue lift weights, try to get a good night's sleep, eat whole foods, and, like, go on walks. That'd get you, like, probably 90% there.
Yeah, 100%.
Like, and then, like, probably the same applies to business more often than not, is, like, sales and marketing. Like, you need to be talking to people and selling and marketing your product, whatever it is. Deliver good value, whatever the thing is, like, be good at it, service or product. And just make sure you're keeping your operations going, like invoices, things of that nature.
Sure.
Like, as long as you did those things, you're probably like 90% there.
Exactly.
Right? And then what about like relationships though? Good communication? This one might be a little bit tougher.
Yeah. Good communication.
Communicate often.
Yeah. Thoughtfulness. Like, I think.
Be kind.
Be kind. I don't know. I think there's also this thing of, this is tough. Letting there be kind of like this seesaw effect of not thinking that you have to be equal all the time.
Like, go with the flow.
Yeah.
Don't be so rigid.
That's it. Just kind of exactly what we were talking about before. I think if you can allow that, like, fluidity to come in and out of your relationship, the better you're going to be in that area.
I like it.
Says the single person. Take my advice.
So, on that note, communication.
Yeah.
I would love to just dive into this with you a little bit in terms of what you maybe would recommend or what you've learned from your experiences in terms of, like, working in sales and working with tons of different companies and lots of different people. And what are the pitfalls maybe that people make in regards to communication, and how can they improve?
Yeah. Well, I think tone matters a lot.
Good.
We'll start there. And two, it's how it's being delivered. So I think it's, even if you're just asking somebody for a quick favor, how are you asking it? And also, how are you delivering it? Is it via Slack? Is it via email? Is it over the phone? Do you leave a message? Like, you're thinking about these things just a little bit more, with a little bit more detail than I think just firing it off. Because I think we get so busy and we have the thing that we have to do, and fuck anybody else who gets in my way. I just need to get this thing done, right? So I'm gonna just ask this question, and it just sounds so rude. You know what I mean? If I'm on the receiving end of it. And yes, like, it shouldn't matter. It's business, right? But also, like, we need to still be personal. And I think that gets lost a lot in communication. I mean, we're talking personal relationships, business relationships, whatever it is. I think that's the main thing that people are missing, is the tonality and then how they're choosing to deliver it, because there are some things that should be said face to face. And I think people have lost courage to say hard things face to face. And that is what I feel like we should bring back, because if you say something hard to somebody on a text message, you're not giving them the benefit of the doubt to handle that information, take it, use it, have the conversation. Like, you're just thinking that it's going to go badly, and so you don't want to be there to witness it in person. And it's like, well, no, that's a learning opportunity for them too, to be able to take that information and use it as constructive criticism. I went a lot of different directions on that.
No,
but like,
great.
I feel like I have a lot of opinions in this space right now, and it's just because I see a lot of things missing, and it's because I think that we've lost this connection, and I just want to bring it back.
I feel very lucky that I grew up in a generation where, like, phones weren't really a thing. Yeah. I think I got my first cell phone when I was 18, which I'm really appreciative of. I think that I'm grateful that I didn't have it for that reason exactly, is it forced me to learn how to communicate via words. Yeah. And a few things I wanted to hit on that I really like that you said. And one of them is that just that aspect of understanding the medium of communication. It's one of the reasons that I use emojis a lot. Yeah. Because it's the only way I can communicate emotion in a text message. Yeah. Because I think we've forgotten that it's more, and I've learned this the hard way. Don't get me wrong. Like, I was horrible, especially when I used to work in healthcare, is like, I would just deliver, doctors do this all the time, is like, I would just deliver the factual information and think that's what was needed. Yeah. Wrong. so wrong. Like there is, I wish it wasn't this way because I'm not a super emotional person. It's like I wish I could just deliver the factual, logical, whatever information because like that's how my brain likes to work. But unfortunately, that's not how humans work. Like there's an emotional component and tone. It's funny you say tone. That's the other thing I want to hit on, is that totally agree. I've come to realize, and I catch myself saying this a lot, is like even when I mispronounce words and people correct me, my comeback to it every time is like, you understood what I was saying. So like the message was communicated. Whether the word was said correctly or not is actually relevant to the fact of like the thing I was trying to communicate was communicated to you. Mm-hmm. So who cares?
Yeah.
It's like, if it's sorry it wasn't in your box that you wanted, just as long as it was delivered in an appropriate manner, that's the only thing that matters.
Totally.
Sorry, didn't mean to jam there.
No,
but
it's good. I mean, yeah, like there's definitely going to be those instances that you run into where things get a little shaky between people. But again, that's knowing your audience, knowing who you're talking to, having built relationships beforehand usually also helps. I get that this is all in context, right? Like you could be talking to a complete stranger, and that's probably where those emojis help out a lot because obviously things can be taken different ways via text or email. But you can always kind of know, being in the corporate environment that I'm in, when you have somebody that is a happy person and somebody that hates their job. And you can always see that in the way that they correspond with you. And that to me is telling. It's like, which one do you want to be? And which people do you think that everybody else is going to want to work with? Which people do you think are going to get the most raises? The people that probably say thank you when you've done something small. Like, even if you are just replying to an email thread and you think, okay, I've wrapped this up. There doesn't need to be any email saying that I've wrapped this up. Obviously, that is, the task is done. But just following up and closing the thread and being like, got this one, thanks guys, like maybe goes a long way. You know what I mean? It's not just this open loop.
Goes a huge way.
Yeah.
And just as a quick note too, I wanted to make, just so people are aware, text messages and emails always, no matter what, are received in a negative tone.
Yeah.
I think that's like a really important reminder for people.
Yeah.
So like the more you can combat the fact of like, no matter what you say or how friendly you felt when you sent that thing, there is always a negative tone around it. It's just the way it works.
So true.
Like, as opposed to when you're in person with somebody, it's the opposite. Is like whatever communicated, assuming you're not an asshole, whatever's communicated is generally like in a nicer tone.
Yeah.
It's just human nature. I wish it was different than it was, but like that's how it works, unfortunately.
It's a good call. I know. I don't. When given the option, I try to have as many in-person conversations as possible. So.
Yeah, you save yourself a lot of headaches.
100%.
Communication in general too. This is something I'm actually learning as well, even just through my agency, is the more I communicate with a client, the more grace they give me.
Yeah.
And the more problems I can avert down the road. It can feel like a little bit of extra work and kind of annoying to feel like you always have to like constantly communicating and sending messages and responding to Slack messages. But it goes a long ways in just like the relationship aspect of working with clients, which I'm sure you see day in and day out.
Yeah, definitely. No, I mean, I had something to say there and I completely lost it.
That's okay.
What did you just say to me?
Just the importance of staying, communicating often, overly communicated, I guess you could say, is what I was going with that one. But
yeah, no, I think when it comes to over communicating, if you're the one that feels like you're over communicating, you're probably doing the job. You know what I mean? Like, I feel like I constantly have to pull things out of people because that communication style, again, in the one-on-one coaching setting, I need the information. So if you're just going to respond to me, giving me a quick note back, and I've taken this trouble of like writing you a paragraph of where I think that we can like make adjustments and do things differently, and you say, okay, thanks. Like, give me something else. Like, let's dive into this. Like, let's make this a full on, back and forth. This is a two-sided conversation. And the more that you give me, the more I'll be able to give you. And that's the same in any conversation.
So what's next for you in terms of this realm of the coaching? What's next for Katie Calloway? Seems like you're fearful to full on dive into what could potentially be future passions, or what's next? What do you think?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And I'm still working on it, I think. But I've put myself in the position to really learn a lot right now. So with the Broads app, I'm working with Tara. She created this beautiful app for one-on-one fitness training for women. And I'm working with clients one-on-one in that app. And right now, I am in learning mode. Yes, I have this experience to effectively coach one-on-one, but in terms of programming, in terms of sales and marketing, in terms of just running a business and being a part of a super startup sort of environment is wildly complicated and something I did not expect to be so much work, and it is. And so that's the thing, is like, I love the mission that we're on. I feel like I'm going the right direction. Where this leads, I don't know. But right now, I'm in love with what I'm doing currently. So you could ask me where I want to be with it in 5 years, and I could still be part of this app, or I could be doing something totally different. What I know is that I think that I've ingrained fitness enough into who I am for me to not lose the quote unquote passion for it, because it's just what I do now. I don't think it's even a passion. It's just part of me. So I don't think I'll lose that ever. And now that I've said that out loud, I actually believe it, because I think that's the first time anybody's really asked me that question. I've been able to say that with certainty, is I don't think it will go away. So now that we've settled that, I think this kind of just opens up doors for me to show up in different spaces in a different way than I have been previously. Maybe just a little bit braver, maybe just a little bit more open-minded.
It reminds me of Arnold Schwarzenegger. I think somebody once asked him, they're like, why do you still work out? Because I think he's might be in his 70s now. I'm not sure. But they're like, why do you still work out? And he's like, why do you still eat breakfast?
Yeah,
why do you still get out of bed? He's like, it's just what I do. Like, what are you talking about?
It's so true. It's so true.
Do you think it took 10 years to get to that point, though? Because you've been doing, that's been like 10 years, right?
Yeah. Well, probably, yeah, closer to 13, 15.
Okay.
Yeah. But yes, I think I got this way probably a year ago, but I think everybody kind of is on their own journey with this. I think somebody could come out of college, find a gym, and then just take off from there. I think it could happen that quick. I will say, with the background of what fitness and health has been for women, especially from when we were young to where we are at now, and the kind of lies and all the bullshit that we were fed over time, it can really mess with somebody's journey and where they think they are or should be. So there's a lot of noise to cut through. And I think that maturity comes with just doing the thing and figuring out what you like, because everybody's going to be different. I don't know what that looks like. For somebody that, like, success could mean getting up every day and going for a 30-minute walk, and then coming home from work and going for a 30-minute walk. And that is what they do for forever, and they love it. And I am here for that. Like, to me, that's fitness. You know what I mean? Like, you don't have to be shredded and on the cover of a magazine for me to think that you're doing a great job. So it's going to depend on the person of what that looks like. But yeah, for me, I think I just found a lot of security and strength within where I've built myself, because I've literally built my body and myself over the past 5 years specifically. And I've gotten it to a place where I feel really confident about where I'm at. And if you would have asked me if I could have ever felt that way 5 years ago, I would have been like, nope. So it's kind of wild.
Yeah, I'm glad you said that, and that's what I wanted to give perspective around, is how long it takes for identity change to happen.
Yeah.
I think that's really what I was trying to get at with that. Because, like, even for myself, I've been weight training now for 20 plus years. I don't know, at least a couple of decades. And yeah, it just takes a long time. Now I'm the same, right? It's like, it's not even a question. It's just what I do. But in a different category where I didn't think that was true for me for a long time was actually in the business category.
Yeah.
So I only started my business coming up on, I think, 6 years ago now. And I'm still unlearning the framing and the mentality and the identity of what it was to be an employee and to think that like having a job was the only way to make money. And like I had no other perspective or framing or identity around anything else. I just assumed that's how the world worked. I assumed that you get a job and you work and that's how you make money and that's how you pay, and otherwise you die. Like that's kind of the assumption. Not literally, but that's kind of the assumption.
Yeah.
And it's just taken me a long time to reframe of like that identity of like, no, there's actually other ways to do this thing. You can actually like create value that doesn't require you to have a job. And just identity change is like, it's huge. It's everything. And it just takes a long time.
Yeah.
And it's like you said, it's just like, you just show up day after day after day. And it's like, eventually nobody will tell you when.
Yep.
There's no light switch. All of a sudden you're just like, oh, wow.
Yeah.
Like I'm different than I was 5 years, 10 years, 20 years ago, whatever it is.
No, I'm actually really glad that you said that in terms of the business pursuit, because yes, it is easy for somebody to look at, okay, yeah, I used to be 50 pounds heavier. I lost 50 pounds and now I look and feel great, but I still feel like that person that weighs 50 pounds heavier, right? Like it's going to take time for that for your brain to match up to your body. Did I say that right? Anyways, but when you said it with business, it's very comforting for me to hear that, because whereas I might not need as much, assistance or focus on the fitness side, because I've got that all kind of like wrapped up right now, and that feels good. Right now, where I feel the most uncomfortable is business, and it's where I feel very like if somebody were to look at me from the outside and they'd be like, "You're doing so well. You've got all these things going for you. I see you on social media. You're crushing." But meanwhile, in my head, in the background, I'm like, I don't know what I'm doing with content. I feel like such an imposter. Like I have no skills. Our pets' heads are falling off. Like that's how I feel. But for you to say that, and I look at you and I think that you've got so much of it together and that you're on the path to something really great. And it just helps you feel less alone in this category, which is really all I want to try to do when I have these conversations, is to remind people that like, it's gonna feel uncomfortable, and that's usually how you know that you're going in the right direction.
Totally.
Yeah.
I mean, you nailed it. There's a lag period. When somebody loses weight, it takes a long time for the identity to change to now internally say like, I'm a fit person or I'm a healthy person. This is true of every category. It's one of the reasons why people who win the lottery often end up going bankrupt. It's because they didn't do the work to adapt their identity of what a mentality or what a person would need to be able to maintain in order to hold on to that amount of wealth. Yeah. It's like the analogy that's often used is it's like a thermostat. Like if your money, will say for sake of example, thermostat is at a 50 and all of a sudden you win the lottery and it jumps up to a freaking 80. Well, your natural thermostat's going to bring it right back down to that 50 again, because you never actually put in the time to build the identity that's required to be at a 70 or an 80, just for sake of example.
Well, this is going to be I don't even know if I want to bring this up because it's such a topic, but like with the GLP-1s, this is where I'm kind of most scared about with all of that, because it's like, I know, it's a scary conversation, but like, it's one that I think about all the time with this stuff. And I'm like, man, if we could just teach the habits, like, then I feel like it would probably benefit most people. But then again, there's a huge upside for most of America maybe having access to something like that too. So like it goes back and forth. I don't know. It's a different conversation too. It's like you don't, it's so much better when you earn it. It feels so much better when you earn it.
I'm going to be super blunt and I'm going to apologize. I fucking hate them.
Like the honesty.
And let me tell you why. Not because I don't think...
I'm on both. I see both sides. So I'm not either or. I just like, that's what scares me with this, I guess is what I'm saying.
The reason I hate them is because people want the shortcut.
That's it.
And unfortunately, the shortest path to get to where you want to go is the fucking path you should have taken in the first place, not the shortcut.
Right.
This is why crash diets don't work. This is why all of a sudden, don't quote me, but I'm almost positive they're now talking about like some of these GLPs are like causing blindness or some other crazy side effects. Because when they first came out, everybody was like, no, like no side effects. They're amazing. It's a shortcut to getting where you want to go. And then all of a sudden, like all these adverse things happen and they realized it's actually not a shortcut. And fun fact, once again, there are no shortcuts.
Yeah.
And this is true of every category.
I know.
Health, fitness, wealth, relationships is like, we want the pill. We want the shortcut. But the shortest path, unfortunately, is the path you should have taken in the first place.
Yeah.
Not the shortcut, because you take the shortcut and then you're right back at ground zero because you never took the right path in the first place. Yeah. That's just my stance on it. Don't mean to be so blunt,
no.
but that's
listen, I like how passionate you are about it. It's like, yes, I totally agree. But also there's like that other side where I see how it could be hugely beneficial for those people who are, you're right. It goes back to that, like if you would have just taken that route in the first place, but they've now gotten themselves there and they are in trouble. For those people, I see it being something of use. But again, for everybody else, it's like, well, I just don't understand. Like when I'm talking about everybody else, I mean, like for women specifically, this bothers me when they weren't really overweight to begin with. They just wanted to be super skinny. And I'm like, like, but also like muscle really matters. And especially as you get older, and that's the one thing that this affects the most. It just depletes all of your muscle stores. So like, why would you set yourself up that way? Like, I get that you're now skinny, but also like, what about when you're 85 and you can't pull yourself up off the floor because you have no strength? Like, doesn't that scare you at all? Like, people just aren't looking at this in a bigger picture. And that's why this message that we on the Broads app are trying to get out there, which is it's about strength. It's about taking up space. It's not about trying to be smaller. It's about trying to be stronger and how that's going to benefit you throughout your entire life. I mean, how you show up in a gym and you walk in with confidence. You know how to rack a bar. You know how to work the machines. You know how to like make friends, in that space. You know how to ask for a spot. You use your voice. Like, you don't shrink back into a corner and want to be smaller, a physical, smaller version of yourself. You are not afraid to be strong and there. And that's like, honestly, what we're trying to kind of put forward out into the universe and like bring more of that to the forefront of what women I don't even want to say should be doing, but should be doing. Like, that's the focus that should be at, in front of every woman of what they're trying to strive for, in my opinion. So yeah, it's a tricky conversation, and you're right. It's the thing that bothers me. But we'll see what happens with that.
Yeah. I mean, there's nuance to everything,
Yeah.
right? Like, there's always going to be categories of people where it's like, yeah, maybe getting you from 400 pounds to 300 pounds is worth it for the going blind, whatever it is. But
yeah, I don't know. It's tricky.
We have a tradition on the show, rapid fire questions. So it's whatever the first thing that comes to mind. Cool. What's your best business advice?
So can I steal this?
Yeah.
Okay. The one thing that like broke my brain, and I love hearing it over and over again, is from Alex Hormozy. And he said, we don't rise to the level of our goals, but we fall to the level of our systems. And it was such an easy way to say what I've been trying to get clients to understand for forever. And even myself, when it comes to how I organize my day or whatever it is that I'm doing, like, it's probably not going to work out if you don't have a plan in place, or how this is going to work more efficiently for you. So that's the thing that I think about all the time still, probably every day.
Getting the systems in place.
Mm-hmm.
Just to give credit where credit's due, I think that was originally from James Clear in Atomic Habits.
Nice.
Yeah.
Okay. Both of those are great.
I'm sure a lot of people said it, but yeah.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure
I like both those guys.
Yeah.
So.
They're both great.
Yeah.
But best marketing advice.
Okay, what I'm finding is don't be afraid to sound like a broken record. I think that is the thing that I've struggled with the most. And it's like, well, no, I have a message and I have to say it 1,000,000 times in order to just get one person to pay attention. And that's just how that works. So you're going to feel crazy and weird for doing it, but you have to.
It's back to the boring stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I tell people this all the time. As someone who's in marketing, is like, I often hear, is like, well, what if I annoy people, or what if I feel spammy?
Yeah.
And I'm always like, listen, if anyone even remotely paid attention to the one-off video you did once a month, my job would be so easy. 99.9% of people never saw it or weren't paying attention when they did see it.
Yep.
You're fine.
Yeah. Yes. I can't tell you how many times I've explained like what the Broads app is, and still people will be like, so what is that?
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay, well, let me tell you again, because obviously you didn't see my post from yesterday, and that's okay. You
And
can't
why
get
should
mad.
they, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
You can't get mad at that.
When are you the most productive?
In the morning.
Who is your inspiration?
My dad.
The doctor.
The doctor. Yeah. No, that guy, he's been retired for like 10 years and he still won't quit working.
Love it.
He just loves to keep learning. He loves to read. He loves to have difficult conversations with people. He loves to move his body and work out, and he's funny, and he's learned how to be a mixologist because he's obsessed with cocktails. And so now he goes back to like he was a medical doctor for a virtual radiology company, and he still goes back on their trips, and he does like cocktail mixing classes for them. So that's his vibe right now. And I just love him for it.
Sounds like I want to know this guy.
He's so cool.
Tell me one secret or something most people don't know about you.
I am actually a very clumsy person.
Okay. You have any examples?
I run into stuff all the time. I trip all the time. I tripped over a large piece of weight equipment today, and I was like, I don't know how I did that, because obviously it's huge. Which is funny because like I was a dancer. I should know how to move my body in space, and somehow I don't. I fall all the time. It's really embarrassing.
What would you change about yourself?
I'm still very hard on myself. I think if I could learn how to give myself more grace, in a quicker amount of time, that would be the one thing that I would change.
What's your favorite app or resource right now? And you can't say Broads. Not allowed.
Man, I really do love a ChatGPT, 11 AI. I use those things probably far more often than I should. So that's why I can't believe I didn't think about that in terms of the journaling. But yeah.
Yeah, one of them is otter.ai, I think it is. So it automatically will transcribe. So like you can dictate to it. I do it all the time. Actually, when I'm out on walks, is I'll like dictate to it, just run of thoughts. And then afterwards, I'll just like be like, summarize this for me or whatever.
I love that.
Yeah, life hack. What keeps you motivated?
Just I want to try to a crack at reaching my full potential. I don't know what that is, but I just want to keep trying for it. So that's what keeps me motivated.
That's good.
Yeah.
Old Nick Bear, popular name around these parts, if you know who that is.
Mm-hmm.
I heard him talking about that recently, and it really resonated with me. Is like people are always like talking about how they compete in high rocks or whatever because they want to win and compete and all those things. And he said something similar along the lines of like, he's like, I'm just trying to see what my potential is.
Yeah, you don't know unless you try. You gotta put yourself in the arena for sure.
I think that's good. I mean, it's great because like there's no end.
Yeah.
Which is good.
Yeah.
I think the most important games to play are the infinite games.
Yeah.
Where it's like the point of the game is to keep playing.
Exactly. That's why like when people have they pull a hamstring, there's some sort of like minor injury at the gym, and then they're just out for like 2 months. I'm like, well, you still have a lot of other working parts of your body. Like I'm sure that there's something we could work on, you know what I mean? And that's that kind of like victim mindset as opposed to a growth mindset, which trust me, I get locked in all the time, and maybe mine looks different. Maybe mine's with, investing or like this marketing and sales, all of that stuff that I'm not as comfortable with. But I truly like I'm trying to make moves in those areas now again, since like the fitness stuff makes sense for me, and I get where that's challenging for other people. But like, yeah, trying to find my full potential in like all of these other spaces where I don't feel comfortable.
I have one last question. Before I ask that question, I want to acknowledge you for embracing your inner jack of all trades, or we'll call it Jill of all trades.
Yeah.
That seems more
Thanks.
fitting. You're the Jill of all
Politically
trades.
correct.
And I say that because, like I was saying in the beginning of this episode, is that I think there is a tendency to people feel maybe a negative connotation around that because society would want to pressure you to like niche down and be a specialist and be the master of this thing. And why?
Yeah.
I think perspective is everything, and I think it's cool that you've owned that. And so, yeah, I want to acknowledge that.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
That's very nice.
Last question. It's whatever your best piece of advice is. So if you were to go back to younger Katie and give her advice in terms of like business, entrepreneurship, marketing, sales, something in that category, what's maybe the best piece of advice you would give to your younger self?
Patience is actually a virtue, and to just remember that and hold on to it. Life is never going to go as you plan, and it's definitely not going to look how you think it's going to look. It's gonna move, and it's going to move fast. And sometimes I think I have struggled a lot in my past with being very impulsive, and not thinking things through all the way, just because I felt like I needed to move on something and I needed to do it then. And I think especially within this last couple of years, I've really challenged myself to take a step back. Even if it's just, again, in that communication piece with people, like maybe I don't need to respond right now. I'm still learning that one, by the way. I'm still working on that. But like just giving yourself the permission to move a little slower when you feel a lot of pressure to move quickly. I think is the one thing that I would tell myself.
I think it was it Lincoln? I don't remember. It was one of our like
worst at quoting people.
It was one of our like founding fathers of some form where whenever somebody did him wrong, whatever it was, they were a jerk, they were an asshole, they took over one of his states, something mean.
Did Lincoln say that? They were being an asshole. So.
Yeah, I don't think he used that. He was probably way more proper. But so what he would do is he would write out the letter in response to this thing that somebody wronged him for, but he wouldn't send it. He would put it in his drawer and he would wait till the next day to decide to send it. And by the end of forever, he ended up not sending like tons of these letters.
Yeah.
Because like essentially after he just let the emotions subside and the cocktail of anger subside, he realized like it just wasn't productive.
Yeah.
So I think there's a good lesson in that. But
for sure.
Thanks for being on the show.